Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Wednesday afternoon. How's it going, Precious?
It is going well. I think winter finally found Texas.
Yeah.
Well, our version of winter. It's supposed to be in the 30s all day today, and there's actually a couple of snow icons on the 7-day forecast. So we'll see how that goes.
Did y'all need like a translator on the news program for like what's that? What does that look like?
What does that mean? No, if we so much as there is a flake sighting, guarantee we are shutting it down.
Yeah. It'll be like COVID times 1,000.
Oh man, forget about it. They're gonna sell out of water and firewood in stores. Like firewood, you just have to turn on your heater. But hey, look, it's here, and so we're excited. We're ready for it.
Well, welcome to my world. I hope you don't have to experience it for too long. For those who are not aware, this is Sell Like a CPCU, put on by the CPCU Agents and Brokers Interest Group. My name is Matt, and this is Precious. As usually, we come at you every single Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. Here, giving you tips, tricks, tools, little hacks, and things like that you can do to be a better insurance sales professional. As a reminder, as always, please like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet, do whatever you got to do. Just get this out there to people that can use the information. So we have a absolutely fantastic guest lined up today, and I will let you introduce our fantabulous guest, Precious, as she is pretty closely associated with you. So go right ahead.
Yes, absolutely. So super excited to have her on. I guess shy of my parents, she's literally known me as long as possible. So I speak of none other than Ladda Hawkins. So Ladda is joining us today, and she is the founder and the owner of My Own Lane Consultants. And she's going to talk to us today about, well, share tips, tricks, and hacks. I remember hack used to be a bad word. Hack is good now. I remember that every time we say it. Life hacks, sales hacks on how do we literally get outside of the homes that we're sheltering in place and use the tools that are available and, connect with people in order to keep the sales funnels full. So welcome and thank you. So,
thank you, everyone.
Yep. So society, I'm sure this is a family affair. I guess Ladda will let you start off. That was my introduction of you. Your credentials are much further than just being, related to me. So you want to kind of share with them what you do, your superpower, and we'll start with that.
Sure. Thank you again for having me. I'm also in the insurance space, specifically in transportation. But kind of as it's related to our topic today, I've done some social media moderation for several years now in different types of interest groups. I've moderated a pretty large job search group based out of Dallas, Texas area. I also moderated homeschooling groups. I'm a former high school special education teacher, so kind of did some things there. I've done single parent groups, and now I'm doing the trucking groups. And so it's just, I just enjoy kind of bringing people together, especially on with shared interest and connecting them to resources and keep the conversation going. So I've been doing it for a while, and I really am passionate about it.
Awesome. I love the fact that you've talked about kind of like groups online, because I think all too often when people first think about marketing and developing opportunities online and through digital media, they're always thinking about, the Facebook ad. They're thinking about, the tweet that goes viral and things like that. A lot of people forget that, first and foremost, social media is about the social part of it, right? It's about building communities around certain things. So you've had some of that experience in the past. What kind of got you into it? Was there one kind of, gateway group that you started up that kind of got you keyed into thinking that, wow, I could use this as an online marketing thing?
It was really the job group as far as taking that social media moderation to the next level, as far as even taking Facebook classes and connecting to the people in Facebook as they were really just doing research on what makes group engagement, what are some of those metrics that they're looking at. And so it's grown, and anyone who's managed a group can tell you it almost changes by some little small tweak, and you have to look for it each day. Like I noticed today's tweak was that you're able, as you're kicking people out, you're able to say, do you give them a special notice, of why they're being rejected from your community. So that's brand new as of today, but it's constant little things that Facebook is doing to, again, being able to teach their algorithm what's acceptable and not acceptable among social norms. So as you mentioned, Matt, the social aspect is really what's key. And I think I really like seeing that the sociology part of it mixed in with the tech part and how it comes together to really make it more user friendly. That was really my draw to learning how to do it better.
Awesome. So, Precious and a lot of you've been friends for a long time going back, but professionally, how did you two get linked up?
So I think it's interesting that, Lotta mentioned that by trade, her background is education. And as a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I had one of my high school teachers who asked me to come to the classroom. Oh, Tony's checking in. We'll excuse the tardy this time, Tony. I had a teacher who asked me to, come in and kind of, give a motivational, presentation to her students. And she was like, man, I think that, you missed your mark. I know that you do well in insurance, but you should have got into education. And I said, who says I didn't? Right. The difference is I don't have a classroom and I'm not, like I said, taking roll every day. But every bit of what we do is just educating one prospect at a time, one claimant at a time, one situation at a time. And so, kind of sharing that experience, and encouraging Ladda that everything that she does, in terms of all the acumen and the skill set and the approach and education, it transfers. So it marries really well with what we do. Taking this really intimidating product or offering or service and breaking it down into actionable, digestible pieces is really at the core of, what great insurance professionals do. So I still remember, again, kind of trying, again, I was pitching, I was trying to sell her on the whole concept that insurance isn't, all paper shuffling, and it doesn't have to, suck the personality out of you, but you can incorporate all of those things, the heart that you have, to teach and to share, and just to really get people to making decisions that are going to really prepare them for what's very well going to be the worst day of their life if they're not properly prepared. So that was my pitch, that I shared with her after doing this for so long.
And I guess I bought it. No, I really saw Precious did a great job in just helping me see the parallels of doing this. And my background, even before teaching, because I went into teaching after getting my degree in human resources, I've always been very people-centered. And so when she showed me how the things align in that way, I was just like, okay, so it's just another way of communicating, a very techie type thing, with the policies and all the nuances in that to everyday language. And that was what I was doing in the education field with special education. I had to make sure I didn't water down content, but I had to put it out there to kind of make sure that my students understood what was being asked and that they were still getting, the knowledge from the lessons. So yeah. I learned kind of how to see things in those two different lights, through education, and I use it every day, in our jobs, just helping the common person understand where your insurance policy can protect you, and also those gaps when you're not being, very transparent, that can come back and hurt you. You think, the more you're sharing with your insurance agent, they're just sitting there tabulating, oh, wow, that's going to add up, and, these things, but they often fail to see exactly to where if you don't say certain things, now you're leaving yourself wider and wider open to where you're going to have to cover,
Yep.
these things that happen because you didn't disclose them. So it's kind of the same thing, weird enough.
So let's talk about, I mean, sharing, like you said, there's so many, to borrow Matt's word again about hacks, right? On how do you, as a consumer, engage in a process? What should you expect from the process? What sort of information would you need to be prepared to share? And so taking that to a less intimidating platform, in terms of, finding people where they're gathered and where they have, like you said, a common interest and a vested interest in kind of understanding this. Because let's be honest, most people, again, especially if they're pretty active on social media, they're more likely to, ask a question in a forum than they are to make an appointment to go show up, sit across the desk in somebody's office. So it's very non-threatening to do it in that space, would you say?
I agree. A lot of times it's even just put out there and they'll say it, hey, I'm not sure. And they'll just put it out there. And that gives you an opportunity even to watch as the professional in the room of the response and where it starts going, oh, don't do that because last time I did it. And I'm like, okay, that's a personal experience. Oh, we're supposed to be doing this. And it's like, I don't know where you came from. And so you're able to kind of then add things to the conversation and not come across as, oh, I'm trying to sell. But of course, as you're adding things and other people are seeing those comments, they're like, wait, how do you know this? I'm glad you asked. And I can have a one-on-one conversation with you. And oftentimes they'll follow up pretty easily.
What I love about social media groups specifically, and like for anyone who's watching or ends up watching this, like you can be the administrator and start the group and grow it yourself. You can also, get involved in a group that has a certain kind of like, set of interests and add value. Just don't get in and like, spam people with like, give me your insurance. Like, no, don't do that. Like actually add value, right? But, Precious has heard me say this before. I'm a big proponent of giving before you get, right? Mm-hmm. Groups on social media, a lot of times they're not centered around like, the risk management of trucking, right? Like, I don't think there are too many truckers that are like, I want to join a trucking risk management group today. Like, what's up here? Like, it doesn't happen, right? But I can tell you that, so like, for instance, I troll for contractor business in the, this looks like an OSHA violation group, right? And it's a bunch of memes of, obviously, or videos of things that are obviously OSHA violations. I like that it's disarming, right? Like you get people to talk about stuff, to your point, Precious, where, normally they wouldn't pick up the phone and call their broker or their risk manager to ask those questions. And so like that conversation gets rolling and you could be like, oh, hold on. Like you might want to like not do that because of this, and actually add some value. Is that kind of how you started the groups? Like, let's talk specifically about transportation, right? Like, what's kind of like the main focus? Is it the operation of building an operation on your own? Is it something funny to do with transportation? Like, what was kind of like the core of the group?
So exactly as you were saying, I went into it not to create my own group, but to really see where I can add value to other groups. And so as I got in there and I was in the very beginning, one of the few insurance people that wanted to share information freely that, wasn't just, like you said, spamming and was, very intense with it, I got invited to moderate. And then I said, okay, well, I like the direction of this particular group. And I usually am used as the bad guy a lot of times in cleaning up a group. They'll ask for rules. They'll ask me to kind of just make sure we're doing certain things because of that experience of knowing that if let's say a post chain goes too long, it's going to attract spammers. And just let's not be so haphazard with our information, because it takes very little information to, add up to be able to look for some of this stuff that they're, to make sense of what they're talking about, because of how open the transportation, through the Safer website, information can be. So, it doesn't take you saying too many things that someone who's following you can piece together. And if they wanted to, do some fraudulent activity, would be able to do so. So just kind of putting those type of things out there, because people just naturally assume, oh, no one's paying attention. But you'll be surprised of who is. But getting in, adding value, and then really branching out and creating your brands from that value. Hey, you want to hear more about this? I don't want to take over this group by the things I want to put in here. Again, more insurance, more content. But here is my group that I share content, because most people on Facebook are going to be part of maybe several hundred or maybe that's just me, but several hundred different groups, and they're always vying for attention. One of the big things that I like measuring in the groups that I moderate and admin is the engagement piece. And I'm happy to say most of our groups, we're having 70+% engagement, which is really, really high for groups of 10,000 or more people. So, really excited about that. And it's fun to play with, because you'll put questions, surveys, you'll notice certain pictures, get the emotional tie-in, and that's where you get people comfortable in talking, and they start coming there as a resource. And that's when you really can, like you say, add value, take them off the platform, and convert them into new clients.
And I think that's a really good point. I know that kind of just brought to mind a meme that I saw where the paramedics were like hauling somebody on a stretcher, and they're like, hey, are you taking them to the emergency room? Like, no, I'm taking them to the comment section because there's tons of doctors there, apparently. You have a lot of comment section jockeys that everyone wants to be the authority on something. Everybody wants to weigh in, give their 2 cents on how it ought to go. I know a couple months ago when I had a claim on my vehicle, somebody rammed a mailbox in the back windshield of my minivan. Okay. And so I posted it because I, again, was just trying to elicit, it was a conversation starter, right? I was like, look, how random is this? Okay, insurance community, like, how is this going to work? I was like, do I subrogate? Do I file it? Do you think this is going to be surchargeable? And, it was not clickbait, but people started talking, right? Because everyone started weighing in and kind of giving their angle on it. And like you said, from a consumer protection standpoint, and I kind of had mixed feelings about it, because sometimes with some of the groups that I'm in, somebody asks a question, and it reminds me of a classroom, right? It's like, ask a question for the good of the room, because we want a public response, because there's probably 5 other people who are asking the same question, thinking the same thing. And so some things are appropriate to respond to, I think, in an open setting. But if we're going to start to go down this path of protected info, please don't post your tax ID number. Please don't share your deck page in this open area. So how do you kind of escort them into kind of an invitation to, now that they trust you, you built rapport, right? They know that you're knowledgeable because you're still engaged in having this dialogue. What techniques have you found are effective in moving them, like I said, off platform to continue to do your thing?
You have to have those moderator privileges at first. If the culture of the group is to just do whatever, however, whenever, those are, and not to step on toes, but I saw that a lot of the trucker, the driving groups, I was thinking, oh, I'm a, transportation insurance person, let me go into a trucking group. I will never again, because they were vicious. I mean, they just they're very just, hey, whatever you're feeling today, trucker who's waiting on loads, if you want to curse the next guy out, you want to talk bad and slander Walmart, here's the forum, here, let's do it. And, post pictures. And I was like, this is way too much. I can't. I can't. So creating that culture, and having those buttons, and saying that's what your expectation is of the group. Let's be kind, and most groups now have where you can assign rules. So you can have, you violated this particular rule, here's your warning. If you keep doing this, if you're spamming everybody, if, people are taking screenshots of your comments and putting it in the room because they're wanting to say, hey, this person is doing this, yeah, you're going to have to be ejected from the room. And that has to be, I've had conversations that it has to be swift. It has to be like, just, this is the rule. This is how it is. And you guys, this is Facebook. I'm sorry that your feelings are hurt because I took you out from your people, but you shouldn't have been calling other folks all these crazy names and been, saying those type of things, so just establishing the rules. And then once you do so, you'll notice that everybody kind of posts and they'll look back at you like, okay, is this okay? Is this approved? And no, yes. And then you're like, yes, you're playing nicely in the sandbox. So I appreciate it. And then that way, as we introduce content, people can feel that they're safe in their comments. And then if there's additional questions that require, like you said, more of that protected information, now here's a professional that hopefully you feel a little more comfortable with, because I'm not the only insurance person in many of these groups, but here's someone now that you've connected with. You're able to check, at a click of a button, their personality, if you would, based on their posts and their interaction, and make those decisions. Is this the person I want to take my business to?
No, that's all good. I was just going to say, Precious, that's when they say that like 70% of the buying decision nowadays is made before you even really kind of start to talk business. Like, that's exactly the perfect example of it, right? Like, those people can basically vet you before you've even started to, kind of like have that, like, let's do business conversation, right? Like, I mean, that's always the like, that gives you 3/4 around on the home run. Like, you're already on third base, right? Like, that's the fantastic part of it. Tony really quickly said, why not share the deck page? I've never been an agent, so I truly don't know what the problem is. I know my answer on that one, Precious.
I'm curious. I was gonna let you take your first stab at that. I think all of us probably have feedback on that.
Yeah. Well, I think I got a camera freeze on you. Hold on. Let me pull you out and put you back in. Let's see. Oh, we might have camera malfunction again.
When it gets good, I warned you. That's my thing.
The gremlins are working. I can tell you, Tony, that every single agent that I've ever known, me included, keeps a X-date list. And if you want to find yourself on a dozen X-date lists and get bombarded with emails and other kinds of messages 3 months before your renewal, I think putting your deck page out there is a gateway to doing that. Wait, what else would you say, Ladda? I mean, there's personal identifying information, or at least company information on there, right?
Definitely on there. And I jokingly say, I said, if you were to pull out your deck page and compare it to your neighbor, most likely, in trucking, it won't look the same. And so there's good reasons it won't look the same. There's also bad reasons, but they're not going to discuss those bad reasons, their safety scores, their credit scores and such. They just want to look at that bottom line number. So there's always those stories to tell. And I just say, only share it with those that are wanting to tell a story back. I get that question often with the certificates of insurance and who should be added as an additional insured. Who do you share it with? Do you share it with the world? Do you, pick? And I said, you just want to be cautious with where your information is. You want to be purposeful even more.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, and I guess, just back to the good old fashioned, identity theft, right? Because that deck page gives you a lot of info. And so if somebody wanted to file a fictitious claim, if somebody wanted to, they could take that and do a lot of damage with that. And so now I'm all for, masking info, because there have been times where maybe it does make sense, not in a public forum, never like in a Facebook group, but, where they're like, hey, I have a quote, send it over to me. And I may, kind of blot out some of the stuff that's not pertinent, kind of the same way when you're trying to dispute a charge on your bank account and like send us your statement. Well, my balance is not your business. And whether I bought, 3 things on Amazon is not your business. I need you to focus on this one piece that we're looking at,
Ignore those other 5 transactions. Yeah, no, don't look at that.
So, and that's where I get to, the public conversation versus explaining to them, hey, that's really good info. I'd love to have a deeper conversation. This is how you can reach me beyond here. I was on another call earlier and I was jokingly talking about, that awkward moment back in like elementary school where they had like a anonymous question box. And you don't have to ask your question. You don't have to raise your hand. You can put it in the box after class and the teacher will grab questions out of here. But then inevitably what happens is when they pull your question, you're the one who's staring at their shoes intently and turning 5 shades of purple. So they know who asked the question.
The teachers know. It's like, Bobby, really, this question?
Right. But so, there's certain things that, if it's a conversation and to your point, there are certain trends that are just evergreen. Questions that come up, you could set your watch to it. At least 5 people a day are going to ask a question about entity formation. Another 10 people are going to ask questions about who are you guys using for insurance, And so those things are very cyclical. And so just establishing yourself and I love what you said earlier too, Ladda, about, presenting well, because most of the time, this is your personal profile, right? And so you want to make sure that if you're using this to solicit business, that, maybe your profile picture may want to have a little bit more clothes than you might use, if it was a purely personal site, right? Maybe, the kegger isn't what you want to lead with. And so how do you kind of reconcile those two? Because there's going to be people that say, hey, this is where I go to for recreation. This is my downtime. This is my personal life. I understand that there may be some opportunity here, but I don't want to have to completely, become someone I'm not just to try to leverage this for business.
So great segue into that. And I think Matt really just touched on it in the beginning to where it's first driven by your interests. And so keywords are really key to finding groups. When someone's bored and they're going through and then groups are being recommended, a lot of times it has to do with the keywords. So if they're in the single parent group, and they have a lot of single parent other groups that they're part of, they're probably going to get recommended for other public single parent groups. When they're searching for groups, again, private groups don't show up in a search, but they might just put in trucking and then they might tweak it a little bit and say Texas, or they might do that. And then just based on what they are already subscribed to, Facebook is going to give them different recommendations. So my strategy has been, because of my unique name, people usually remember that. And so that's why I really have my full name listed out. I'm not Catholic. I have my full name listed out right here to be able to help people remember my name and just how different it is. I get called Miss Love a lot, and I'm just like, okay, if that was the only thing you got out of it, at least you remembered it was me. I'm fine with that. So my business persona has a lot to do with the groups and those interests. So it's very much, I'm going for that personal edge. But I've seen people where they said this is their business group. It's the name, ABC Insurance Agency. They kind of go about it that way because they're setting that, that bar. They're looked at in a certain way. But I think, starting off, especially, you're going to have to leverage your personal information, who you are as a person, because as you said, that's where they're making those decisions on, can I trust you, to go offline with you.
Yeah. And as Precious tries to get back in here, I think that was also a really good question, because I think a lot of people they're worried about they're worried about putting on airs. Like, they're worried about, okay, so like LinkedIn, typically people have their professional profile. Like, there's not too many people that go on political rants on LinkedIn. And it's actually very well self-policed, I would say. So like on LinkedIn, if someone tries to get too political, there's going to be a bunch of comments where it's like, take that to Facebook, or sign up for a Twitter account, I think like there's 2 ways you could go, right? You could either, like you said, Ladda, you could keep a personal profile, and then the groups that you get involved in, you have a direct connection with, right? That's interest driven or whatever, or part of your life situation, which is the most synergistic way. It's the easiest way to do it, right? Like, it's living who you are. The other angle is you can start an alias account or whatever, and just do that strictly for your professional Facebook, and then have like a really basic, like, personal account for friends and family or whatever. And I think at the end of the day, the one thing I would love to hear your opinion on this. A lot of people look at social media and they see like a bunch of fake people, and they see these people that just give you like the glamour reel and everything like that. For me, social media is like a truth serum. Like, you can't hide who you are forever. Like, it's gonna come out. Like, eventually there's gonna be one thing where like you press send and you're like, oh, like, wrong profile, like, right? Like, it's gonna come out and you're like, oh no, like, no, wait, hold on, can I take that back? I would love to hear your opinion on that one, because fake people get found out really easily nowadays. Would you agree?
I do. And that's really where I've learned. And in the groups, I've showed people of just how to research what's being posted in that group. And again, natural curiosity, going down that rabbit hole, they end up starting to go look through their personal profile. Oh, they've got beautiful children and, all those other things. But especially how Instagram has attached now to Facebook, I think it really calls that out. If your pictures and such are not consistent to your brands, and the more professional people who know how to do that, you can really almost see it at a glance. It looks like a catalog. And you're going through this particular person's profile, and you're like, everything's a shade of pink. They're like so on target with their branding, but that seems so fake at the same time. It's like you just have a permanent pink filter. How do you do that? Compared to, shamefully, I'll say mine, that it took me a while, because I really like to be behind the camera more so than in front of it. And so Instagram is very, visually driven. And I struggled with that. I didn't know what to put out there. And, I had gotten some feedback of, they want to see your face. And I'm like, but why? What does that have to do with anything? I was like, can I post other people and just say that that's me? And they're like, no,
you can get a camera like mine where you can't show your face.
Well, yeah. But the consistency and just more savvy, the consumer, they're going to be able to pick up different things like that. But unfortunately, a lot of people get fooled. And, these shows and everything, because, Instagram has shows and you can watch a whole TV series, Facebook too. And you're just like drawn in, and you become part of the entertainment. And I think it takes away from the real connection. But I also have found that when that happens, people just use it for entertainment. It's really hard to get them now off the platform and into a business setting, because they just want to see more show. They're like, oh man, show me more of, that time that you had a barbecue. Show me more. And it's just like, no, I need to buy.
That consistency piece is huge, right? Because if you are trying to pass yourself off as the expert in all manner of things, then they're like, okay, wait, hold on, because are you the personal finance person? Are you the insurance person? Now you've got some medical recommendations, because you can't possibly be, kind of the end all be all. And then also, and if you are sometimes, and again, I'm all about, multiple streams of income and things that, people have got gigs and I respect that. But to me personally, it's a little bit of a turnoff when I'm looking to do business with a professional and they're like, hey, you can too do this, not only can you buy this product, but do you want to sell it to other people? I can get you on. And it's like, wait, whoa, what? I thought this is something that you had, some actual experience with. I didn't know that this was just the gig du jour, and and especially something as relationship driven as insurance. If I do eventually buy from you, are you even going to be around? Right. Or are you going to be moving on to the next shiny thing? And now, I have, buyer's remorse. So I think, some of the hesitation with really leveraging social media kind of comes down to that. preach all the time about personal branding. So I'm a insurance professional first, and then whoever I'm affiliated with, it may change, right? But I've been in this industry for years, and I don't foresee making any major changes there. So what would you say to somebody who maybe their brand kind of is primary in who they are? So they work for one of these big alphabet houses where that's their claim to fame is, hey, I'm representing XYZ company. Is that something that people typically share in this forum, or is this all about focusing on the personal brand?
I would say more so the personal brand, because I know a lot of the bigger companies do have very strict social media policies on what you can put out there, because they're trying to control their brand. My son loved the Drake at State Farm Super Bowl commercial, and he was just like, "Oh man, that's Drake," and I was just like, "But what about the whole other part of the commercial? You missed, everybody else. That's Drake though." And I was just like, "Okay, I get it." And so you have to, and I think too, with having so much autonomy over that profile, the company and more companies are checking, if you have that listed on there on your profile or your mentions or hashtags, now they can go and search and see, what representative of their company is saying. But because you have the controls, the ownership of that profile, you may be a little challenged in what you can and can't say. So I would really say try to keep it more personal and invite, you know, um, future conversations. Everything doesn't have to be documented on social media. That's just the beginning.
Yeah.
You put it out there, you connect, and now you take it offline.
But
Yeah.
that is a really good point, because as licensed individuals, regardless of who you work for, there's certain things that, just best practices you really shouldn't speculate on, right?
Mhm.
And so I try not to, if someone's talking about an actual loss, I rarely weigh in on anything that's involving a claim, because that's between you, the papers written on, the adjuster handling it, and the facts lost. I can't, it's not my job to go in there and say, oh, they're treating you wrong. You need to ask for this, ask for that. Because wherever I go, my license follows me.
Mm.
And then that's also the difficulty too with social media is jurisdiction. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because they can be hailing from anywhere around the world, and depending on where you're licensed to practice, how do you, is that something that you kind of ask on the front end to determine if there's someone that you can work with, or where does that come up in the process?
It really probably comes up a little deeper in the process, as far as like what their needs are. So and I've actually had that happen kind of often, to where you'll have a profile and you can research where the profile even comes from, and it's an overseas profile, and they're asking questions, and then I'll ask the question, is this for you or someone basically, like, you're asking a lot of very specific questions, and from there you kind of see if you'll be able to help them. And if not, it's a great segue, because sometimes they're just information gatherers, and they actually are really trying to connect someone else, but they are more comfortable, or they were deemed the asker of the group, and they're just kind of asking, but they're really going to connect you to someone who might be stateside. So I asked that question as I noticed that there's just the rapid fire of very specific questions. But I try not to be like, oh, this profile comes from Serbia, click. I try not to be that limited in scope. Just because I don't want anyone else to kind of do that. And I've actually been surprised. I've met some great connections in Africa, in Jamaica, in the Philippines, and I mean, we're still able to kind of have conversations. They're great referrals.
Mhm.
They are knowing people here. There was something that made them reach out. And so I try to really just keep that energy going with, okay, great. Thank you for talking to me. But again, is this for you or for someone else? Because if it's for someone else, I really would love an introduction to be able to meet them more.
Yeah. No, those are fantastic points. I think to that point of, where is the business being done is a really good one that I think the insurance industry itself is going to have to grapple with, because we definitely as an industry have not solved the issue that we are a global industry where someone in Texas or New Jersey or in Singapore can basically talk to anyone anywhere else in the country and be asked to give advice or things like that. The other thing with kind of like with the being authentic thing, it also comes, having a certain level of professionalism. So legitimately, if someone's in, whatever, Tennessee, and you're not familiar with their workers' comp laws or their auto liability laws, do not purport yourself as a expert when it comes to that kind of material, right? Like, if you have to make a referral, make a referral. Like, I think the one thing that I take away quite often is that, like, the sale that you don't make, that is that like landmine sale, okay, is worth, three that get away, or three that you end up writing that didn't get away. Like, don't take that hand grenade and be like, oh well, it's a sale, so I might as well take it. Like, that couple hundred or couple $1,000s in commission is not worth it. Do you see some other? I'm sure you see as a moderator some other faux pas on the part of, and it's probably not even just professionals that are a part of these groups, but there's got to be some other ones without putting anyone on blast. No.
Sometimes it's the phrasing of a question. Being a former English teacher, I was always real sensitive with my students on how to ask questions and to really dive into what the question is asking. When a question is asking, test question, knowing by the language of the question, it's very specific on what answer is going to be an appropriate answer. And so I've kind of learned how to read between that, but I'm so shocked by how most people don't know how to ask nor answer a question. And so they'll ask a question, do you know how to get an authority set up? And then someone starts talking about something totally different. And it's like, wait, did I miss something? What happened here? And so using those as teaching points, and I literally call them that. I was like, I don't think that's what they were asking. And they'll be like, oh, well, what I meant was, and it's like, well, how did we know that off these select words you choose to use? So social media and texting, just again, using words and not being really, you're not a wordsmith, and not even being fancy, but just being very direct. If you didn't want to know this part of it, why did you include that? And, even the brevity of things, when something is being asked, how do I start? Start what? A car? A business?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you asking? How do I start? I don't know. Who are you?
Yeah.
But that brings up another point as well in terms of just compliance, because I know that most agencies, we have recorded phone calls, we have a system that, maybe preserves emails, and so the chat box, the room that you're in, isn't something that could be captured for E&O purposes, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's really hard because, the words that you use are still only as great as that person's ability to interpret that, right? Because they can ask you a question and they want a yes or no question. You're like, well, I can't answer that as a yes or no. And they're like, okay, so I'll put you down for yes, because people sometimes they hear what they want to hear, and that what they're looking for is justification, for whatever conclusion that they've already drawn, And so that's another concern as well in our industry, is that, we have to kind of tread lightly, because should things get twisted around, what do we have to fall back on? So what have you found in terms of just best practices, when it officially converts, like you mentioned earlier, from an opportunity or online relationship to now this is somebody who's actually in my sales funnel, and now I have to, regard them with all the same, sensitivities that I do someone who's in the, who's now a prospect.
Right. So you have to change that level of formality almost like instant. And a way I found to be able to do that is great. You've asked some great questions. I want to be able to know more about your business so I can better answer your questions. Let's set up an appointment. Setting up that appointment again takes it away from being I'm just talking out the side of my neck, just okay, type vibe. And now that when we meet again under this appointment, we're going to be more official. And like you said, that's when you get them on the recorded agency line. That's when documents are now shared via email and, encrypted. But you change that dynamic as soon as you see it shifting, because otherwise you're going to continue getting the pieces of a text, oh, I needed your social security number. Here it is on text. Don't send it that way, like, no. So just, you have to change that. And I've just really found that was that softer way to change it. But as soon as, and I even had someone comment on that. They're like, wow, you're more, stern than I thought, online. It's just like, yeah, we could joke and play, but I'm pretty sure you want a serious or a professional who's listening to you. And so I just really am careful with my words, because I know certain words, like you said, will cause other emotions. And so I said, set an appointment to discuss your business. And all those words are carefully chosen to be like, we're not going to do it here. We need to do it here. And this is about your business. It's no longer playing around or, socializing on social media.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like having that switch or that I don't even know a better analogy. I think it's just a switch, right? Like it's like, okay, business mode on, right? Like I'm not your buddy right now, right? I think that's tough for some people to really kind of master that, because especially if they're kind of like really jovial or something in a informal setting, it's tough to kind of like reel that back in, and now all of a sudden you've got like your thinking cap on, or your professional cap. So that's a really good point. I have a question for you logistically in terms of kind of like building the groups. In your experience, have they just kind of been have they kind of organically built themselves, or was there any kind of like outreach specifically that you or other moderators or members of the group that were really doing in order to kind of bring people in who weren't currently part of like the Cool Kids Club?
So it can grow organically, but it's going to be a slower growth. Keeping it public versus private, because I think a lot of people's instinct is to go private, and you can only change those settings at certain times during the growth of your group. So if you chose to go private, once you hit, and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but several thousand, you can't go back to public, and vice versa. After certain numbers, you kind of get locked into those decisions. But I would definitely recommend starting off public. Grow it, and that way you're taking advantage of the recommendation feature that Facebook has in the other groups that they can see, that the member might be interested in. So you're going to start seeing that rapid increase, but then you have to really control who's in that group, as I was saying, to create the culture, making sure everybody is agreeing upon group standards and norms, and not coming in just to and that's how it almost feels sometimes. You'll have someone, you could tell that they're brand new. You get a lot of these crazy kind of just, I'm testing the water type posts. What do y'all think about this? And then crickets, because it's like, who are you? Did you just get here today? So you can kind of tell that. And then, depending on if it's a fit or not for that group. And I've recommended other groups to people. I'm like, hey, I don't quite think this is the group you thought it was. And maybe this other group might be a better fit. And, I'm in both, just kind of sharing a suggestion, but another post like that, you get deleted from this one. So, so it's just, you have to maintain it. I know a lot of groups at first, it was a numbers game. And even, further back, probably like 5 years ago, Facebook allowed you to basically tag someone and add them into these groups. So we were automatically just in multiple groups and didn't even know anything about it till someone said something. And like, when did I become a baker? I don't know. And so that doesn't happen anymore. Facebook has not kind of, but they've eliminated that ability to do so. Each person has to be added, and most groups have questions right now that are there for the, to weed it out. But
Oh yeah.
groups are becoming more structured
Mm.
and more but the free things that are part of your groups, as a moderator, as the admin, you can add other people to help you with that. You can see statistically, where your information is coming from, where these profiles are coming from, the times of days that people are engaging with your content. And I mean, that's valuable information that's being offered for free. So
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that's really the big benefit in establishing a group.
Because I
Yeah, and
think to your point, like the accountability piece, and we saw that here, in the past couple of months, that, groups are being held accountable for the behavior, misbehavior of their membership and the things, the community, stuff that's being shared. And so, there's a lot going on, on that front. And then also to, most groups now, when you click on them and it has a little pop-up and it reminds you these are community rules, because now you can enforce those, right? Because it's the whole terms of service violation, and it's because of bullet point number 3, that we're, kind of parting ways, and I laugh, and of course I can say this because I've got, Ladda on here, that in the early years of internet, stuff with AOL, I was notorious for like getting our family's account, like, on the naughty list, because I would get into like these chat rooms and have these really spirited conversations, and they're like, you're on the cusp of like a terms of service suspension. And my dad's like, what did you do now? It's yeah. So, again, making sure that, we define these, expectations and kind of rules of engagement. And so this is the sort of stuff that's going to be allowed. This is the sort of stuff that's going to be discouraged. These are the things that are just prohibited, that, we just can't have. And I remember, again, even in the early iterations of Facebook, when people used to tag you in things, right? Mm-hmm. And so getting tagged in photos, and all of a sudden it's on your timeline, and these are photos that you would not have cared to be included in, because you're not actually, you don't appear in that image. And I know that, oh my gosh, like I said, just thinking about how rapidly that whole thing has evolved, the things that are and aren't acceptable now, the things that people will tolerate and things that they won't. So I guess I want to kind of ask you about that as well. What would your words of wisdom or advice be to maybe someone who tried to dip their toe into this water before, didn't find much success, and is a little hesitant to try it again? Is there anything that you would share as far as the updates that make this more doable now?
As you said, the focus is on safety. Even if you're leaving groups, there's a little survey that asks you why, what happened, were they offensive, and do you want to report anything? And so there's a lot of internal policing by Facebook, even because of all the other things that happened that got a media attention. But it's a different Facebook. And I barely would say more responsible. It's not quite LinkedIn responsible yet, but there's still some very stuff that goes on. But social media, I think, again, as people are now using it longer, better, they find uses for it, has really matured. So it's not just the fun thing that your phone has, the only button on your phone type situation, the only choice. There's so many. And I'm always amazed when I look at that. They're like, which social media? And I'm like, which? Oh my goodness. There's like literally hundreds of them now. And each of them kind of have a different purpose in how to engage with other people, but Facebook is kind of the grandfather of it. So I say, if you're kind of just dipping your toe into social media, start off by just picking some select groups to observe, see what the culture is in those groups, and decide how you can best interact with it.
And so with the platform identity, I think that brings another point. And Matt, you mentioned something earlier where if you try to share personal stuff on LinkedIn, people will tell you take that to another platform. And so you have some that are the mindset that Facebook isn't really the place for business things. Now, of course, more caveats, right? I think a lot of it has to do with, are you B2C, B2B, like what kind of businesses, and then also kind of who your target audience is. So if you are going after a more white collar type thing, then sometimes LinkedIn is a little bit more effective, because that's where, the conversations are a little bit more, scholarly. People read. They
People
actually want to
read,
read.
yes. People read. I was going to say that one. People
But
read on
versus,
LinkedIn.
yeah. So when that, for that argument that business transactions shouldn't be born out of Facebook interactions, kind of what is your comment on that?
It's just another platform to meet people. We've been talking about the social aspect of social media. So Facebook statistically has the most. And so that's just kind of where you're meeting them where they are. Now, how active they are in Facebook, that's a different, story, as other platforms are gaining, notoriety and such. But Facebook, if you want to just have that initial here's some type of presence, and then you can really see their preferred way of communication from there. But, the ones that are engaging in groups, as we've been talking about, are going to be more active on there, because they've just appreciated how, again, they're already there. They're used to it. They may have started because, their parents are there, and this is the way they kind of get into it. Like you mentioned earlier, this is my downtime, but now that I happen to be in downtime, as things gravitate and you start, like YouTube, going down that rabbit hole of different things to click and such. And now you're here based on your interests of your business. Now let's, see who I could connect with. But think of it more as a networking opportunity than just being strictly sales oriented. And that's really where it works best with the relationships. You've got those other platforms that if you want to sell something on the marketplace, and marketplace may not be the best place to put, I don't even think you can, but just, it's not designed for that. So there's other forms that are more aligned to insurance, and, those more consultative types of sales. But just think of it as another networking opportunity.
Yeah. No, I think those are all good points. And I think a lot of what we talked about today, some of the Facebook specific stuff aside, the tactics and tools and things like that, they apply regardless of whether it's a Facebook, group or a LinkedIn group, or, a Clubhouse, hangout, or so any of those things can cross apply to those types of groups. It's really just how do you take that group social interaction that's happening digitally and, leverage it to at least, display your expertise, and then, perhaps get folks to kind of, like you said, take that offline conversation, or the step towards an offline conversation that now becomes, more business related. I want to say thank you. I want to be respectful of your time. We're coming up on an hour. I want to give you the opportunity to pitch your My Own Lane consultant. So specifically, what are you doing there, and how can people find you?
Sure. So the website is myownlaneconsultants.com. We are designed to be a new trucking venture hub for resources, all the things that you'll need if you're starting out a new trucking insurance company. So it talks about how you could get started with or without a truck, the different tools and resources that you're going to need, and then also has an opportunity for partnerships. So also too, I'm on different platforms. My Linktree has all my platforms listed on there as well. So it's Linktree, which is linktr.ee / my name, Ladda Love, LADDALOVE. So
let me throw that up just so everyone can see what it looks like, so they know what they're looking for here. If I can make the technology gods happy here. So this is your Linktree here. I love the background. It's absolutely fantastic. I think mine still has the just free, completely blue background. So I'm kind of behind the game here, but no, I want to say thank you. I appreciate it. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I know to Precious's and obviously yours. The first policy that I sold when I opened my brokerage was via Facebook Messenger. So that was like kind of like that aha moment where I was like, wow, like, yeah, I actually was able to, take one of those conversations and leverage it towards a, messenger conversation that resulted in a sale. So I would appreciate, I appreciate you bringing that information to others as well on this platform. Precious, anything else that you wanted to ask, bring up, highlight before we roll out of here?
No, I just think that this is such a necessary conversation because, with COVID, gone are the days when you can really just kind of go door to door and show up unannounced. And, some of the things that maybe some of our agencies were built on, a couple years ago or 2 years ago, they just is not possible right now, And so with a lot of the stuff that she shared, these are more meaningful ways to engage that really are. There's no cost. We're not necessarily talking about, churning out an expensive budget for a bunch of pop-up ads. We're talking about how do you connect with people who are searching for information, position yourself to be the resource that they're, looking for, and then translate that into ways to do more business. That's the whole, premise of what we're doing here on, Sell Like a CPCU. So, yeah, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise in that area because this is going to be, for the foreseeable future, what's necessary, to survive, to grow your book in a lean and efficient manner. So good stuff.
Thank you.
Awesome. And am I right in assuming that you're a basketball fan based off of the poster in the background?
A little bit. I have two boys. I'm a boy mom. Not boy. I almost said that wrong. And opportunity is actually my favorite word. And so they found this for me, and it just kind of it matches.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to take part in the knowledge that you have to share. A reminder to everyone, we are here every single Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 Central. We will be back next week with another fantastic episode. Precious, another one in the books. Have a good evening. Ladda, thank you very much. And everyone should join us at 5:30 for How to CPCU. We're going to be talking about the International Insurance Interest Group for the School Society. So yeah, I don't know if they brought any libations or anything, but they throw some kicking parties. I'll tell you that much. So we'll see what Abby's got in store for us. But
nice.
Thank you both as usual. Have a very good evening, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye now.
See you.
Thanks, guys.